Shabbat Shalom. So some rabbis, some priests, some ministers, and imams walk into a sukkah together. I know this may sound like the beginning of one of those really awful jokes, but it actually happened last night. And by the way, there were also members of the Sikh faith, the Baha'i faith, Ahmadiyya Muslims, Ismaili Muslims, Hindus, Zoroastrians, Unitarians, Mormons, Reformed Conservative and Orthodox Jews, Catholics, and a variety of Protestant denominations as well. The program was organized by the Israeli consulate here in Houston. Consul General Livia Link Raviv was determined to make this happen despite people saying it'll never work. And Brant Burleson, the strategic outreach director for the consulate, worked tirelessly to invite all these various guests. We would have loved to host this event here at Beth Yeshurun, but our sukkah already had been booked every single night. That's not a bad thing, actually. Sunday night, we had, of course, our Beth Yeshurun Community Sukkah dinner, prepared by our wonderful chef and kitchen staff. Monday night, we hosted an event for Houston Jewish funerals for families who had lost a loved one during the past year. Wednesday night, we hosted the Federation Israel Mission Travelers. And Rabbi Fort is actually going on the mission, so how could we not host that? And then last night, we had a deli dinner extravaganza for our young adults, which Rabbi Fort organized, along with our amazing program director, Jennifer Rosenzweig. We had about 50 people show up in the sukkah last night. You can check out the pictures on Rabbi Fort's Facebook page, which is all to say that Beth Israel hosted the Israeli consulate's Interfaith Sukkah dinner last night. But we hope to host the second annual Interfaith Sukkah dinner next year. I was delighted to be one of the Jewish representatives at the program last night. There were about 45 guests of the various faiths gathered at round tables in the sukkah. In addition to the delicious food, of course, we talked about how our different faith traditions teach us to actually care about each other, to respect each other, and to work together to make this world a better place. Now, I know it may sound Pollyannish, but that's exactly what happened. That's exactly what we did. There were some folks there who already had a special connection to Israel. For instance, we were unbelievably fortunate to have a leader from the Ahmadiyya Mosque in Haifa who happened to be visiting Houston right now, and he was invited, and he came and blessed us with his presence in the sukkah last night, along with other members of the Ahmadiyya sect of Islam. Israel is the only place in the Middle East where this particular sect can worship in their particular style. Their mosque is on Mount Carmel, which is not far from the Baha'i faith's Shrine of the Bab, with its beautiful Persian gardens. The Baha'i faith actually has its international shrines in Israel, one in Haifa and one just north of Akko. But Consul General Link Raviv was primarily interested in bringing people together of these various faiths right here in Houston to show that faith and religion can be an inspiration for tolerance and cooperation. And Houston is such a diverse metropolis, as we all know, so what better place to have this special interfaith program than our amazing city? So often people seem to think that religions are the cause of much of the hatred and bigotry in the world. But every single person at my table stated pretty clearly that it was his or her faith tradition that teaches her or him to love and care for each other, and even to respect our differences, whether about faith, ethnicity, or nationality. Several people commented that there is only one race, the human race, and we have so much more in common than the things that divide us. And I'm fairly sure that that idea was pretty uniformly agreed upon at all the tables last night. It's true that many of the faiths represented in the sukkah might be called messianic. That is, they believe that their founder was a person who would usher in an age of universal peace and prosperity and acknowledgement of the universal sovereignty of God. Many of them, not just the Christian faith, but some of the other ones as well. And probably many of them would have liked to have convinced us, the rest of us, that their particular Messiah was the real one. But I think they also knew or realized that we weren't going to be agreeing on that particular aspect of their faith last night. And that doesn't matter right now. We all agreed, including the Hindus, that there is only one God, one creator of our universe. And that God, above all else, wants us to treat each other with dignity and respect. That God does not want us to cause wars or promote hatred or prejudice against each other. Regardless of the differences that we might have about who is the Messiah or the other details of our faith, we all agreed on that. And I mention the Hindus specifically because many people wrongly believe that the Hindu faith believes in many gods. But every single Hindu person I've ever spoken with is adamant that there is only one God. According to their tradition, God takes many different forms, which is how we get this misunderstanding about the nature of their faith. Since we had a couple of Hindus at my table, I actually told my favorite story from the Hindu tradition, which you probably heard before, about the several blind people who encounter an elephant. So the story is they all encounter an elephant and they grab on a different part of the elephant and then they start arguing with each other about what an elephant is based on the particular part of the elephant that they have come in contact with. And then they go to a sage and they ask the sage, which one of us is right? And the sage answers, you're all right and you're all wrong. You're all right because the part of the elephant that you encountered, you described pretty well. But you only encountered part of the elephant. You didn't describe the whole elephant. And the point of the story is that in each of our faith traditions, we do the best we can to understand God, who is really hard for human beings to understand. And we use our faith traditions to grasp as much of God as we can. But it's really pointless to argue with each other about the details, since none of us really has a complete picture. The other example I shared was about the human symphony. We have different faith traditions, and just like there are different faith traditions, there are different instruments in an orchestra. And a symphony would be really a boring piece of music if everyone played the trombone. It takes a variety of instruments to make the music sound divine. And so it is with religions. The world would be boring if everyone believed exactly the same thing. Our differences make humanity so fascinating and so complex. We learn from each other because we have different points of view. We can also sharpen our own faith by listening to the perspective of others. And again, this analogy was received pretty well around the table. Now you might be thinking, why did we do this on Sukkot? Why is this holiday different from all other holidays? Why have an interfaith gathering on Sukkot? But in fact, I think Sukkot is the perfect holiday to celebrate a multi-faith program. And here's why. Each of our pilgrimage holidays has an agricultural basis and a historical basis. They're all agricultural because we were farmers and we were harvesting, and so they're harvest festivals. The historical basis, well, we know Passover. Passover represents the Exodus from Egypt. The historical basis for Shavuot, fairly obvious. If you hold one finger in the Bible and you put another finger in the Midrash and you kind of look at it the way the rabbis did and use your imagination, you can see that Shavuot falls on the day when we got the Ten Commandments. The historical reason for Sukkot is not so obvious. The booths that we build and sit in during this holiday are supposed to remind us of the booths our ancestors lived in while we wandered through the desert. But there were no verdant branches to hang as roofing in the desert, no fruits and vegetables to put up to decorate. Our ancestors ate manna for 40 years, this weird gooey stuff that God gave them to eat. If they had real fruits and vegetables, they would surely have eaten those instead. Moreover, there's no fixed date for the wandering of the Sukkah. We were wandering for 40 years. So the rabbis ask, why do we celebrate Sukkot specifically at this time of year? And they answer, because it's colder outside. It rains a lot. And it's not when somebody would want to go outside to sit. Of course, they never lived in Houston. Here we would say it's too hot outside. But regardless of why we remember the 40 years of wandering on this specific week in the calendar, that is the historical basis for the holiday. But more importantly, during this week, we remind ourselves of the fragility of life, and we take ourselves out of our comfortable beds and fancy living environments with our air conditioning, and we go outdoors. We go back to nature, and we remind ourselves that we're creatures of God's universe, God's world that he created for us to take care of, that we're part of nature, and we can see the stars through the roof to remind ourselves of our planet Earth, and that it's only one of many thousands and millions of planets in the universe. And we sense the commonality that we all share as human beings. That's why we read perhaps the prophet Zechariah, who says, after Israel is punished and the enemies are punished, everybody's going to come and worship in Jerusalem. What holiday? Sukkot, and give thanks to God. Why would he say Sukkot? Because Passover is a national holiday. It represents our exodus from Egypt. Why would anybody else celebrate that? Shavuot celebrates our giving of the Ten Commandments. Why would anybody else celebrate that? But Sukkot is a holiday for humanity. I think that Zechariah is telling us that if everyone celebrated Sukkot in nature, we'd all realize how much we have in common with each other. We all live on the same planet and share the same resources. We need the same fresh air to breathe. We need the same clean water to drink. We share the same environment and climate that we need to protect. And that would hopefully encourage us to share and preserve these precious resources. We will then hopefully appreciate the need to cooperate rather than be divisive and antagonistic toward each other. So I want to congratulate Consul General Link Raviv on persevering and making this special Interfaith Sukkah event a reality. May it soon come to pass that all of humanity can share a meal and a sukkah together and build a better world together. Chag Sameach and Shabbat Shalom.